All right, welcome back.
Hello, welcome.
Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of the Guys Telling Stories podcast. I'm Rich Douglas.
I'm Bill Easton.
And Bill, it is early in the morning.
This is not a good thing.
That's right. We're up a little early today. We're meeting our guests for coffee. And Bill, you look a little tired and sore. What's up?
Hockey. Had a hockey game.
Oh yeah, late night.
Yep, late night. Too old to be doing this. I'm on the ground a lot. Everything hurts.
You're only as old as you feel, right?
Yeah. So I'm 78.
He's feeling pretty old.
Those of you that don't know.
Yeah, well, we're up early to meet our guests for coffee, but before we get too far into that, I just wanted to tell you, as always, you can find us online at guystellingstories.com.
Very important, our website. And we're on Twitter also, Guys Tell Stories. Facebook page, Guys Telling Stories. And we appreciate all your support that you've given us so far. And thank you.
Yeah, and speaking of the support so far, again, talked about it a few times already, but head on over to guystellingstories.com and click on that support the show link. Yeah, we've got this little page where you can show your support for us. We do this for free. We really appreciate it.
Yep, we do. And there's a bunch of different things you can do there also. We do have a sponsor already. We'd like a few more, and there's different levels that you can support us at. And in return, we'll do some things for you. Mention you and your company in an episode, and Rich holds up signs and with your name on it. Is that one of them?
Hey, it's a cool page. Definitely check out what we offer you, because we try to get creative with it. So again, hit up the support the show link at guystellingstories.com. But let's get on to our guest, Bill.
Joe List.
Joe List. You might remember the name from Last Comic Standing. He was on Conan O'Brien, I think, not too long ago. I remember seeing him on David Letterman. And what's cool about him is, any comedian really, they're artists, but they're the type of artists that are performers and creators. Mm-hmm. So, you might have a musician who can just wail on the guitar, or you might have like somebody who's a beautiful dancer or singer, but you got these comedians and they create all their own jokes and then they go perform them. And there's no instrument, what I'm saying? There's
town to town.
Yeah, it is. It's a unique art, and it's really cool when you kind of crack that headliner status, and they're touring all over and getting people showing up just seeing you. So we're excited. What's cool about him too is he's one of those guys we talked about in the very beginning. Not only did he take the first 1,000 steps, a little bit of a risk taker. This is what he wanted to do with his life, but again, he's that type of guy who took those last 20 steps to that mic, and he's out there every night, and he's making people laugh. He's in town. He agreed to meet us for over coffee, so we're gonna head to a coffee place.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. And you know what? It'll be interesting too. I bet we'll hear some some blenders in the background, people lattes, little kids screaming, but it'll be good. So let's go talk to Joe List.
Let's do it.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Guys Telling Stories podcast. I'm Rich Douglas.
I'm Bill Easton.
And guys, we are extremely excited to be sitting down with an amazing comedian, Joe List. Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great. It's nice to know that it's like a professionally done show. Sometimes you say yes to these things, and it's like a guy in his mother's basement, and there's no sound equipment and no computer. You guys have a real computer and microphones, and it's a real thing we're doing here.
Joe List, famous comedian. He's been on multiple shows. A finalist on the
Last Comic Standing show. Was that
NBC.
This past summer?
That was this past summer, yeah. Yeah, I was a finalist. Famous is very relative.
You're famous to us.
I'm successful, certainly, but famous is tough. But yeah, I was a finalist of the Last Comic, which was great, a great experience.
When people look you up online, they're going to probably be able to see, I know you've done the David Letterman show right before that went off, Last Comic Standing recently. I think you're recording an album right now for Comedy Central, right?
Yeah, as we speak.
When will that be released tentatively?
I think summer. That's what they said, summer. So I don't know if that's June. I imagine we should be able to turn it around by June. So
Yeah. Well, before we get too far into it, why don't you tell people where they can find you online? Social media?
At Joe List Comedy on Instagram and Twitter, and then Facebook, comedian Joe List. Instagram is my favorite of the social media.
You're the second person to say that, yeah?
Oh, I'm ripping it on Instagram.
We're still trying to get the hang of the Instagram thing, because I'm like, Bill, you need to take more pictures of your food, I guess. I see a lot of food.
I've been doing it. I just don't eat much.
I bring the heat on Instagram. I got a lot of sunsets and mountains and all this stuff.
Are you getting a lot of love back?
I do, yeah. I get a lot of love. It's really nice.
Yeah.
It feels good. It's my favorite medium.
Awesome. Well, what we like to do is bring people back to the beginning. What I'm hoping for is someone's on the elliptical working out, like I said, cutting the grass, driving in a car, and they go, oh, I got to catch up on that podcast. And they go, okay, comedian, Joe List, I wonder what he's all about. So maybe you can take us back, like way back. Let's say you're, 16, 17 years old. You say, I think I might want to do comedy for a living. What's going through your mind? What was that like?
Yeah, I wanted to do comedy really early because I was born in 82, so I was like, came up towards the comedy boom. I was like a little kid during, the VH1, A&E. And it sounds made up, but I used to watch like A&E, Evening at the Improv. They would play it in the morning, and I would like eat my cereal before school watching comedy. Yeah. And my uncle introduced me to like HBO comedy, George Carlin and stuff. And I remember being like third grade and like memorizing George Carlin doing it again. And then I remember I had like the VHS taped off of HBO. One time I put it in at like my parents' house. And my dad started watching. He's like laughing. He's like, this is great. And my mother came in and she's like, what the hell's going on here? What are you watching with our 9-year-old son?
Turn this off.
So I kind of wanted, as early as I knew it was kind of I was 9 or 10, so I also wanted to be a baseball player at the same time. But I definitely loved comedy and was like, that would be a thing I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, because when we were getting ready for this, I was like, when I was 9, 10, 15, 16, I was into sports, and I was like, I bet I'm going to grow a lot taller. I'm going to get super muscular. I might be a football player. I might, you have these dreams. Did you want to be something when you were?
Well, obviously I wanted to play hockey. My parents steered me away from hockey at a young age because it was dangerous. So that always, once you can't do something, you always want to do it.
Yeah, see, hockey is your George Carlin.
That's right. That's right. And, eventually I got to play, and for considering I didn't really play ice hockey till I was 16, did probably as much as I could with it, because you got to learn how to skate normally when you're a little younger to be successful. But comedy, too, it was always a hobby. I always think I'm funny, whether I am or not. That's a different story. But the Rodney Dangerfield, his stand-ups, Eddie Murphy, when they first started coming out, the older people to me, I was younger, and I enjoyed listening to them, and they tickled me inside. There was something about it that not only was it funny, but it was something that stuck with me. And,
sure.
When am I going to come into a situation where I can use that?
Right.
So.
I think it's special no matter where you come from. Like, just watching one person talk to a bunch of people and make them laugh is a really neat thing to see, especially when you're a kid. It's kind of mind-blowing. You're like, that's wild to me.
Yeah, people think of teachers like that. There's always that one teacher that isn't afraid to jump on top of a table.
Right.
Scream like, science is great. And you're like, I don't really like science that much, but I like this guy.
Yeah. I think a lot of comedians, myself included, a lot of comedians, if you ask them what they would do if they weren't a comedian, I think most of them say teacher. Or
really?
Not most of them, but I think a lot of them say teacher.
When you said there's always like Bill's hockey was George Carlin, I think we're about the same age. And I just remember how fast, maybe I was younger, but how fast I would hear about somebody and then they would have their own sitcom. I remember hearing about I think it was Jim Brewer. All of a sudden I hear he's getting a show with Tim Allen. I remember seeing Tim Allen. He had the #1 movie, I think it was Santa Claus. He had his #1 book, and he had his #1 TV show, Home Improvement.
Right.
When we were about 16, 17 years old, all of a sudden everyone's like getting super famous by doing comedy.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But now it's so different because everything's so splintered. There is no #1 anymore. Every TV show there's a million of them, so it's weird.
Well, where were you living when you first got your start in comedy? How old were you? All that?
I lived. I lived in Whitman, Massachusetts, which is where I grew up, which is about 35 minutes south of Boston, right next to Brockton, the city of champions.
Nice.
Home of Rocky Marciano.
What's up, Brockton?
And marvelous Marvin Hagler. But I grew up in Whitman, and I just always wanted to do it. And through high school, I always thought, well, when I graduate high school, I'll start doing comedy. And then looking back, I could have been doing it while I was in high school. But everybody always regrets not starting earlier. Yep. I started when I was 18. I still wish I started earlier. Yeah, as soon as I graduated, I kind of just didn't do anything for like a few months and wanted to do it and was just too scared. And then the work of Bruce Springsteen really fired me up. Born to Run and Thunder. And I was like, I gotta live, baby.
Nice.
And so I was walking through Boston one day, and I saw like a sign that said open mic, and so I just went there. And it was this place called Chops Lounge, right next to Fenway Park. It's not there anymore. And it was like the truest open mic I've ever seen. It was like literally there'd be like drug addicts up there. The bartender would go on. It was crazy, and it would just go all night as long as people kept showing up. And so there was like maybe like 9 real comedians and then a bunch of crazy hobos and maniacs and drunks, and it was great. It was amazing, and I had just graduated, so I was kind of like I was a good kid. I never drank or did drugs or anything. I was just kind of like this 18-year-old nerd, kind of thrown in with all these adults, and I loved it immediately because it was kind of a weird, almost like a sideshow situation, and it was really great. I loved
Sounds
it.
like a situation where you also can't fail.
Yeah, it was really...
Well, that's kind of cool, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember right away, like this guy that hosted it named Larry Lee Lewis, he'd play piano. He was kind of a combination of Jerry Lewis and... who am I thinking of? Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah,
so he would, there you go. I was thinking of a different name. So anyway, I would go on, and this guy, Larry Lee Lewis, he handed me his card after my first set, and he's like, that was great. He's like, check it out. And I remember being like, I'm in showbiz. I was like, I got Larry Lee Lewis's card, and I went home, and I was like on top of the world.
Oh, that's great.
It's amazing, because back then, the longer you do comedy, the less effect it has on you doing well. Like back then, you'd have a good set, and for like a month, you'd feel great. Now I have like the best set of my life, and I feel great for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, what are you doing tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm like, God, I should kill myself. But so I started there, and I would go every Wednesday. It was a Wednesday open mic, so I'd go every Wednesday for like a year, and eventually someone was like, there's a Sunday show. It never occurred to me to do more than that show.
Right.
So you get in that comfort zone. And so then I started going every Sunday and every Wednesday, and then it became every day, and just became an obsession.
Yeah, with bringing it back to, for me, for sports, it's like you have these practices every single day after school. But, with something like comedy, you're not going every single day after school. You're doing it once a week, and then all of a sudden twice a week. I give you a lot of credit, though, because I bet there's a lot of people out there that don't try it till they're 25, 26,
Definitely,
27. So you think you had an edge a little bit? Not an edge, but an advantage over people that got a later start?
Yeah, I think it helps. I mean, I still didn't find success until I was like 13 or 14 years in, but it definitely helps because whenever you do, you're still, I'm 33 now and I have some success, so people still look at me as kind of a young headliner or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely helps to start early. I mean, anything, I think the earlier you start, the better you'll kind of be. But a lot of people also, whatever your path is your path. So like some people just were too drunk or crazy, or they were having a kid, or they were doing whatever. So it all sort of works out, I think.
Yeah. You think of, we talked about teachers or those coaches, there's that person that sort of encouraged you to keep going. Or likewise, that first person that told you suck and discouraged you. Was there anyone in particular that you have on your path that you remember? Hey, this girl said, keep doing this, besides Jerry Lee Lewis.
Larry Lee Lewis, yeah.
Larry Lee Lewis.
There was a lot. I've been like unbelievably blessed with a lot of support and like a great people around me, and I've met so many nice people that have been encouraging. A few things. I remember my grandfather, who's dead now. Thanks for bringing it up. No, I'm kidding. I remember he like kind of sat me down and talked like real early because I didn't go to college, and I didn't have like a regular. I wasn't really pursuing a normal career, and so I would go to comedy at night, but during the day, I was just kind of a bum. Like I would sleep until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember like people were kind of like, "What's up with he's becoming a bum and he has so much potential." But I remember my grandfather being like getting down on a knee, like real grandfathery, and just being like, keep pursuing. I think it's great what you're doing, and it's amazing. And so that was really helpful. And then comedy-wise, I remember the first year I was doing it, I was kind of performing to the audience there. The open mic I would go to was a lot of like middle-aged guys and stuff, and these weird kind of towny drunks. It's because it's like a dive bar. And my friend Artie Januario, who's still a comedian, we started at the same time. He's much older. He was in his 40s when
you're
he started.
Starting out, yeah.
But we became buddies. And I remember him saying, he's like, you're great, but he's like, but stop trying to be a 50-year-old guy. He's like, you just do 18-year-old stuff. He's like, stop trying to perform to the audience. And that really helped me because that's what I was doing. I was trying to make these guys laugh.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'd be like, oh boy, whatever I was talking about. But he's like, talk about, Pearl Jam or whatever the hell you do. Whatever that 18-year-old does. He's like, pimples or whatever the hell. And so that was really helpful. And then, so a lot of people definitely helped and were super encouraging.
Yeah.
That's cool that your grandfather encouraged you, because there's a lot of people from that generation who would sit down and get on one knee and say, you have an opportunity to go to college and you are blowing it, son.
Right. Yeah, that's what was amazing. I think a lot of people my whole family, especially my parents, if they ever had any doubt, they never expressed it to me, which I really appreciate. Which is nice
thanks a lot, Mom and Dad. Yeah.
So if they did that, it was behind my back, which is nice. They were always very encouraging. They would come to shows real early, and lend me money, even though they didn't have any money, which I didn't realize at the time. And now my parents are broke, and I realize I'm like, no. Because when I was young, my parents were very good at not letting us know that we were kind of middle class or lower middle class, and they would just, I never wanted for anything. And then you realize, I'm like, oh, we must have money. And then you're like, oh, shit, we have $0.
Well, yeah.
They're just giving me their
way.
money. And
Maybe
you're
that's
like,
why
wow.
you weren't encouraged to go to college.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I used to do a joke about that. I'm like, the way I see it, I saved them like $20,000 a year. So
You sure did. I remember growing up, bought our first house, and I was like 7 or 8 years old, and we were so excited, but we moved in the winter. So all of a sudden, we come back, outside in my memory, just the snow melts, we go outside to go play, and we're in the poorest neighborhood you could imagine.
Right.
My dad goes, well, here's the plan. We're going to fix the house up, we'll sell it in a year, and then we're going to move to, the suburbs or something.
Right.
And I think 9 years later, we end up finally moving to the suburbs. I mean, I'm starting high school. But I was a really fast runner as a result. I was really, I loved basketball. I had the epiphany when we finally moved there that, we don't have any money either.
Right. Yeah, see, we had like a good life, and I don't want to give the wrong impression that we were in the projects or anything, but like it was like a thing of like, when you realize you're like, they're like paycheck to paycheck, kind of situation.
Most people probably still out there paycheck to paycheck, believe it or not. It's nobody's living off their passive income that I know.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my buddy. I have my rent is like $580 a month, so I have 4 roommates, and my bedroom is 14 feet by 7 feet. I don't want you guys to think
You got a nice little bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I'm saving money because of that. And I was talking to my buddy, and I was like, I got some money in the bank. And he's like, that's more than anybody in America has. I'm like, I have more money in my savings account than anyone in America has. Because I pay $500 a month in rent and have no car and no health insurance, so I'm just saving this money. So I'm like I gotta do better, and then I'm like, I guess I'm doing better than most of America. So
it does make you kind of feel, I guess, pretty good.
Yeah. By the way, I'm also like a chipped tooth away from having $0 or a sprained ankle or whatever. I have no insurance whatsoever. So.
Well, don't suck on stage, and no one will throw anything.
Yeah, I walk very gingerly, and I can't play pickup basketball anymore.
Yeah, none of us can. Yeah, I didn't think about that. The whole no healthcare thing. There's no union representation for comedians, making sure wages are.
Yeah, no, there's none of that. So.
Yeah, but at least I guess, having some success more recently, that you're not going to be the guy working at those open mics. Doesn't mean you can't still, but you have a little sense of security in the sense all right, if I keep working, I'll keep working. Perpetuates itself.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's definitely a fear because you only book so far in advance. After June, I'm out of show business starting in July. I have nothing booked.
That's wild to
me. If
me.
anyone here books a comedy club, please have me in July.
Get your list on there.
We have a party. You do parties?
Yeah, I'll do parties. Yeah, I mean in July certainly.
July
4th of July
So it is July 4th.
Yeah,
I might do one for $50 at this point. So.
That's great.
$40 in beer.
Great. I don't drink, but I'll take $60, no beer.
Okay,
We'll call it a deal.
We'll talk about.
Well,
that.
you get to pick. We're going to ask about that no turning back moment. It could be when you had those first, you said 7 or 8 years where you were, kind of figuring things out and maybe you didn't have that success yet, or you said more recently. But what was that no turning back moment where you realized, this is it, this is my life?
It's interesting because, and it sounds weird, I never thought, I'm a very insecure person, and I hate myself less so than I used to, but I never considered doing anything else. I never had another plan. Early on, I thought I'd be a firefighter. My family's all firefighters.
Oh, cool.
And then I found out you have to be a paramedic to be a firefighter now, in Massachusetts at least, and that's people do stitches, and I'm like, I can't stitch someone up, so that is just over. That was an end of that.
You're
dream.
out, yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm back to comedy again, and since I started, I've always just thought, I'll just figure it out. Eventually, I'll make it. So there's never really been I never allowed myself to think, what if I don't make it? Because I always thought I was pretty good and had some potential or whatever. Even though looking back, when I was 19, looking at what I was doing now, if I look now at it, I was like, oh, that sucked. I sucked.
I know.
But at the time, I thought I was pretty good, and people told me I was good. So I always felt like I would be able to make it somehow, and that's probably just because that's probably more ignorance than it is confidence. I was always just like, I guess I'll just do this.
Well, it's bliss when you don't think you can fail. Like Bill was saying, for us doing the show, it's like in the beginning, the first season, no one knows about you. Nobody really cares about you. So try everything. And there's no way we could fail. I'll call him with an idea and say, hey, I'm going to email this club in Amsterdam. Maybe they'll share our show. And he goes, go for it.
Right.
And I was like, I kind of wanted more encouragement than that, Bill. And he goes, no, what do you care?
I'm sorry, Rich. It's a great idea. Go for it.
I love the idea also.
Yeah, well, thank you.
We love it.
I already did. And they did share. It was kind of cool. But
Right.
who knows? Like, it's just an idea you have. It's just trying something, seeing if you fail. And by failing, it means like maybe nobody replies, maybe nobody likes your
Right,
post. I mean, you're getting a lot of love on Instagram, but like, can you even imagine what comedy was like? I mean, obviously you can before social media.
Yeah, it was strange. I mean, it's weird. I started doing comedy at a time where it's like I remember going to like road gigs and pulling over and using a payphone or asking for directions. So it's kind of strange. It makes me feel old and weird, but just because technology moved so quickly.
Yeah, move past us for sure.
Like I have my first notebook. I have a 7-digit phone number in my notebook. It was like Chris Jones, 85. So like it was like long enough ago that we were using 7-digit numbers, and I remember like people leaving voicemails on my mother's answering machine. Like I didn't have a cell phone, so. And I have like somewhere I have like a shoebox full of like written out directions where like you would call the venue and be like, okay, make a left at Sunoco and shit. And now it's just like an address.
I still love that stuff. I had the thought to maybe get a house phone, but I don't want to pay for it, and I don't want people calling me either.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to take messages.
I don't know. You know, you like fix your house up, or you're painting a wall, and you're like, you know, it'd be cool is if like the old phone, because I still have those memories. It'd be perfect right there.
Yeah, there's something romantic about boiling, spaghetti, and you get the phone under your ear and on your shoulder, and there's a cord everywhere. The kid's all wrapped up in the cord.
Yeah.
He chokes and.
Well, and your kids learn. I'm not trying to say kids these days, but kids learn manners too. Like when you had to call your friend. You call that girl for the first time, dad's going to answer the phone. That's how it works.
Right,
Dad or mom answer the phone. You don't answer that phone. And you
right.
have to say, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, is so-and-so there? Can I talk to her? And then he says no and hangs up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, now, I mean, I've been in a relationship for a while, but like now being single is amazing. We have Tinder and Bumble and texting. I mean, that stuff is beautiful.
Yeah.
I could have used that.
Well, Bill and I, we're both married, but I mean, I went on my wife's newly singles girlfriend's Tinder. I don't even know if that made sense. And I loved it. And I probably broke all the protocol. I was hearting everything. Right. I was liking all the guys. I was
For her?
Yeah. I was like, we're going to find you somebody.
No, it's fun. But by the way, I went through a girl's Tinder as well using it, and every picture of a man looks so douchey to me.
Yeah,
I hate him. Every guy, I'm like, I hate this guy. I don't know how you women do this.
But as a guy, those are the people I responded to. I was like, this guy has a cowboy hat on, and you're going to love him.
Right.
And there was all the guys at the gym taking the gym selfie with the cell phone in the picture, like them. She was off within a week, though, because she got so many replies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's a nice-looking girl.
Yeah.
Of course she did. Every one of those guys replied to her.
All my buddies, we just do. I'm not one of them, but everyone has like pictures with like Conan because we've done like late nights and stuff. So you take that picture at the end with Conan, and it killed. I mean, people love it. Yeah,
like,
it's you and Conan.
How do you know Conan? Well,
like,
I'm glad you asked.
You're like, don't worry about it. Come on over and I'll show you.
Oh man.
What do they call those things? You have like a life-size.
Oh, like a wax museum?
Yeah. Oh, like a cutout.
He's in your corner, just hanging out the house in the bedroom.
My buddy did that.
Conan.
My buddy did that for his.
He's looking at me like, yeah.
My
that out, Rich.
My buddy's college yearbook is just him at a wax museum. So like you have like 8 pictures for like your college, and it's like him with like Obama, and it's like him with, or maybe it was Clinton back then, whatever it is. But it's Michael J. Fox and Bruce Willis.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we always try to go a little inspirational in the middle. Can you think of and it could be a cool story though, like a funny one about like an obstacle, maybe just bombing, something that like afterwards you were better for, but you know what I mean? Like, man, this story was terrible.
At the time, it was
a huge obstacle, but looking back,
Yeah, I feel like I have sort of a plethora of those. But, I mean, there was one thing, like, I did Last Comic Standing in 2010. I did it, season, whatever that was, season 7 maybe, or 6, whatever it was. It was 2 seasons ago, but it was 2010. And I had just gone through, like, a big breakup. My world was shattered. My girlfriend left. She went to South America, and I was, like, devastated. We lived together. I was in love with her.
Yeah.
She moved away, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I gotta kill myself. I hate myself. And then Last Comic Standing came to town, and I kind of auditioned for it, and it went well, and I moved on to, like, the next round, and then that was in New York, and it was, like, a sold-out show, and I crushed that one. I had, like, the set of my life. And then I was like the last guy, because they call you one at a time. You're like, you're going to Hollywood for the next round.
Right.
And I was like the last guy. They were like, the last guy, moving on. And I got it. I went crazy. And I looked into the camera and I said, I miss you, Becca, like into the camera while I got my thing. And I was like, this is like a big moment. I'm like, I'm going to get her back. And I'm going to LA. And I was like, who needs that girl? I'm going to make it as a comedian. This is what I want anyways. So then I went to Hollywood and shot like the semifinals there, and I lost in the semifinals, but I was like, well, I'm going to be on TV all week. I remember emailing her being like, I'm going to be a minor celebrity. I just killed it on Last Comic Standing. I got a little surprise for you. Watch closely. And then when the show came out, they completely edited me out of the show, 100%. I was just gone out of the show. Like, you see my arm a couple times, and like, I don't even know how they did it. They just made it so I just was gone. I was erased out of the show. And like, she was in South America, like watching it online. She's like, are you kidding? I don't see you anywhere. And I had told all my family and friends and posted it on Facebook. And like, I got all these calls being like, was this just a hoax? Were you joking? And I was like, I swear to God I was there. And it was like devastating. Because then she was still gone. So I lost my girlfriend and the TV thing. And it was like definitely like a low point in my life. And I felt like I was very resentful towards the industry or whatever. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is like the worst thing. And, yeah. But I kept, like you said, like I kept going because I had no other option. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I can't do anything else. So I just kind of kept going. And then eventually I kind of got redemption this last summer by going back to Last Comic Standing. And this time they aired me, and I was in the finals.
It sounds like a humbling experience too, like going back to the place that maybe you felt this way, totally rejected from them or cut out. I mean, I don't even know how, like you said, how do they do that or why do they do that?
I guess I mean, for a long time I was very resentful towards NBC and Last Comic Standing in the industry, but then I think you realize that like, they have a lot of people and it's only a limited amount of time, and I kind of started going, well, I should have made myself more memorable. I should have done a better set, and I wasn't that strong. And, it's not like I kind of got in a better place mentally where I'm like, no one is trying to be like, let's screw this guy over. There was a reason that they thought it wasn't, it wasn't the best thing for the show. They're trying to make the best show. They're not trying to be like, what, this son of a bitch just went through a breakup. Let's ruin his life.
Let's crush his soul some more. Shatter those dreams a little bit more.
I think you just got to realize like, oh, maybe it's on me more and stuff not being done to me. So,
well, good lessons learned. Is there anything you did differently that second time around? Because it seems like you crushed it this past summer.
Yeah, I mean, I was just a much better comic. I had 5 more years of sort of focus and writing and working new stuff. And so I was just a much stronger comic and person generally.
That sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Yeah. We kind of skipped over it a little bit, but you have been on Last Comic Standing. You recently did Conan, like you said. Maybe did you get the picture with him?
I don't know if anyone did. I mean, I guess you need a screenshot of it. I didn't take a picture, but I think you could screenshot it. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Somebody, actually, you know what? No, somebody did take a picture. It's on my Instagram @ShowListComedy, and it's me. It was like right after the show, and I was kind of like, he was leaning in, so I was like talking to him, like, because it's it's loud, the crowd's clapping. So there's a picture of me kind of like whispering in Conan's ear. It's a real treasure. It's pretty great.
Yeah. What's that? I mean, it seems like you're performing all the time, but what's it like to be in front of a camera that is going to go to millions of people who might be falling asleep watching you as they're going to bed? Is it?
It's interesting.
Hopefully falling asleep after.
Yeah, right after.
After.
Yeah, like a half hour after because they laugh so hard. It's weird. I always just try to, whenever I've done TV, I think I've done a good job of just focusing on the audience that's there and not worrying about the camera or who's watching at home.
It's gone.
Yeah, because it's essentially the same as every other show. It's just an audience of people there, and you're telling the jokes that you've told before. So I kind of just try to focus on that. And it's always been pretty good. I've actually had pretty calm, enjoyable experiences on TV so far.
Yeah.
Because there is an audience of people, and they're the best audience because they're fired up. They want to laugh. It's a big deal for them. Like the people in the audience at TV shows, this is the coolest thing they've done in a while. It's one of the best gigs you can do is on TV. So it's actually pretty enjoyable and nice and not too nerve-wracking, I don't think.
Yeah. As an audience member behind the scenes, we went to one of David Letterman's, not his last show, but we, as somebody who has been in the audience, you stand in a line all day.
Right.
Waiting to just hope to get in. Then the weather started to get bad because it was January. So they bring us to a building across the street, and you don't know what you're doing. They're telling you to line up a certain way. You don't know if it's height, order, age. You could be separated from your loved one, and you're like, that's fine. I'll just keep standing here. And then this guy comes out, and he warms the crowd up. He actually said to us a thing about bed. He goes, when you're watching Dave, and it's late in bed, and he says something funny and sort of nudge your wife a little bit, I want you to take that nudge. I want you to put your 2 hands together, and you go wild and crazy in that crowd. So by the time we got in, we were fired up. And I think on that show, it might have been, it was Donald Trump, and the crowd just went wild. It didn't matter what was said, but being behind the scenes, you're right. That audience would have probably I don't know, rust the stage if they would have let them. You know?
Right.
It's a good show.
Yeah, Letterman is definitely the best one because Letterman, that theater is set up for comedy almost, where it's like it's a theater as opposed to like Conan's more of a TV studio.
Okay.
Not more of, it is. It's a studio, and so it's a little less like a theater. I mean, like Letterman, the Ed Sullivan Theater is set up for the performing arts. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So
Cool.
So Joe's here in Buffalo recording a album.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It's for Comedy Central Records. I have a record deal, which sounds super cool.
It's really cool.
And I chose Buffalo. It's funny, this city, I was talking about this on stage last night. This is like the most insecure city I've ever been to. You tell people you love Buffalo, they're like, come on, what are you talking about?
You're right.
I'm like, no, it's great. I really like it here. Because people keep being like, why Buffalo? But it's a great club. I mean, if you're listening in the Buffalo area, you have one of the best comedy clubs in the country.
Yeah, take that to heart. Yeah.
Helium Comedy Club. And I had this. We were trying to find a date and a place to do it, and this is like one of the best clubs there is. So I was excited I was excited to work here. So I had been here once before, back in 2013, opening for Nick DiPaolo, and it was just a great weekend. So I chose here, and we're recording. We did 2 shows last night, 2 shows tonight, which is Saturday night.
Yeah.
And just trying to get the best album. And last night, the early show Friday was great. I'm hoping tonight's even better, but I feel like I have it. And so then we're going to do some light editing, and it'll be out on Comedy Central Records sometime in the summer on iTunes and all that crap. And,
Great. We'll make sure we in the summer we'll post a reminder to everybody.
Yeah, that'd be
and
great.
for you as well to let everyone know that that's coming up.
That'd be great. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, you always want an album. I grew up listening to comedy albums and stuff, so it's fun to kind of contribute my own work, not to sound pretentious, but
you have
it feels
to,
cool, you know.
Yeah, sort of self-promote. You know, speaking of your own work, if we sort of move this thing to look ahead, you said after June, you know, the schedule's wide open. So what vision do you have for yourself in the future, say next year, next 5 years?
Well, I just want to keep... My ultimate goal is to do stand-up comedy for people that came to see me as opposed to just came to see a show.
Okay.
Like now, I'm doing a show for, maybe 10 out of 200 people came, like, we're going to go see Joe List. Most people are like, we're going to go to a comedy show, and then I just happen to be who is performing.
I see, yeah.
The goal is to, perform for 1,000 people that are like, we're going to the Joe List show as opposed to we're going to a comedy show.
Yeah.
So I just want to keep kind of doing that. I'm working my own podcast called Tuesdays with Stories, and doing that and trying to get that to grow. And then my podcast partner, Mark Norman, and I, we're developing a couple of TV shows and trying to get those kind of sold. And I'd like to have some sort of TV show and, just keep plugging along. I try not to get too far in advance because my head goes crazy. I'm a mentally ill person, so I'm trying to keep it.
It's smart.
That's what's funny about you.
So I'm trying to keep it sort of a day at a time, just try to keep being a better comedian and keep working.
Yeah. You're the first person we've talked to that has his own podcast.
Oh, nice.
And we always ask for advice in the future, and we'll get to that. But, how are we doing?
I think this is great. I'm loving it. I think it's great. They've got some babies crying in the back, and I feel bad about that. But no, this is great. And you have real equipment, and you're nice, and you're listening. So those are all good things, I think.
Well, no, thanks.
Thank you.
And I was sincere when I asked for the feedback because what we've been doing is trying to go to you. Like you mentioned, you might be doing an interview and you're in a radio studio one day, but then you could be in some guy's basement.
Right.
If you're willing to agree to the interview.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff in comedy. Shows are like that too. Where you're like, I'll do that show, and then you get there and it's you're performing for a guy's parents and they're like recliners. And you're like, what the hell is this? Like there's a lot of weird shit. So.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. Wow.
Yeah.
But is there anything you want to plug about the podcast? You guys release weekly? Is it usually featured guests? What's the makeup for people that are new to your show?
It's a weekly podcast. It comes out every Tuesday. It's called Tuesdays with Stories. We have no affiliation with Tuesdays with Maury. We've never read the book. We're not Jewish. We have no idea. So
I've never even heard of it. So.
Oh, really? Oh, it's a big book.
Back off, Mitch
Really?
Albom.
Yeah, Mitch Albom wrote it. He was with a friend of his that was dying. I know about the book. I just haven't read it. But anyway, it comes out every Tuesday, and sometimes we have guests. Usually it's just the two of us, and we kind of talk about our adventures on the road. Mark is right now single and just having a ton of sex. And the contrast is I'm engaged and I don't drink. So I'm like, the one recently, he told a story about having a threesome. It was like a half-hour story, and then he finished, and I told my story about going to Joan Baez with my wife.
Who was the other guy?
I don't know. It was someone named... two other guys.
We're not judging. Yeah.
So it's a straight comedy podcast. I mean, it's real silly and also quite irreverent, just to warn everybody if they're going to check it out.
Yeah, ours is mostly clean, but this episode will be a little explicit.
I know.
You.
Sorry.
Sorry about that, Mark, too, by the way. I don't even know you.
Yeah. No, he's fine.
No.
Yeah, I swore a couple times. I hope that's all right. You can bleep me out.
You know, your path's been long, Joe. You've been doing this for, 16, 17 years?
Yeah.
Was there anything right before you got this success recently that you think was holding you back?
Well, for me, definitely it was alcohol, if I not to get too serious. I mean, I was a drunk for a long time, and I think that really kept me from being as successful as I could have been and have sort of become. Not that I'm really crushing it, but I
told you you're famous.
I'm making a living now, which I wasn't doing then. But yeah, I would drink real heavily. I didn't really I would just finish my show and then just start drinking. I never listened to sets or wrote after the show or anything. And then I quit drinking about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and that has definitely changed my entire life, but my entire approach and all that stuff. That's definitely been the biggest sort of bookmark in my career before and after drinking and not drinking.
In this age of social media, have you ever compared the sober Joe to the pre-sober Joe in terms of the actual comedy?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's just become a lot more, I think, sort of personal and just more quality, where I'm kind of before I'd be like, that gets a laugh, perfect, it's done. And now I'll kind of tweak a little bit and add stuff. And I think it's become more personal and just stronger. I'm a guy there's a whole sort of image of comedians are these struggling, sad, weird people, and you got to struggle to be a good artist. But I can only write and perform when I'm feeling good and happy. And for me, getting sober has helped all of my relationships, and that has made me in a better place mentally, which allows me to work harder and write jokes. Because when I get in depression, I go in a sinkhole. I can't write. So it's better for me when I'm feeling good and happy.
That's cool. That's a great.
So.
No, and I appreciate the honesty because these listeners is a very these episodes just podcasts in general, they're sort of personal. You don't listen with somebody else and look at them and smile. So you might be that guy or girl listening thinking, that's really cool you shared that story because, I'm kind of struggling with the same thing.
Oh, good. Yeah, I hope so. And I hope that they get help or whatever because it's great on the other side. It's amazing.
Yeah.
A few years ago, a friend of ours invited us to it wasn't quite an open mic, but it was definitely 9 or 10 local comedians that get on stage. They have 10, 15-minute sets. They were hammered. Almost every one of them could barely talk.
Right.
And I get that that's supposed to be fun and you guys are doing this together and it's 4 hours long, but there's still a job to do. There's still 100, 150 people here, and not all of them, but a good number of them were get off.
Just
get off.
Yeah,
there was the next person up there.
Yeah, I did a lot of shows where I was, blackout or repeating myself or slurring. And my first CD, actually, I'm doing my album. My first album, I'm audibly drunk on it. I can hear anyways. I have my Boston accent is coming out. I slur a couple of jokes, so it's it's so brutal to listen to. But there was definitely a lot of shows where I was too drunk to be on stage.
Cool. I hear that. Yeah. Well, final thoughts. Anybody out there that's looking to kind of start their own thing, maybe take that next step. Maybe they're having some success like you and are looking to just, like you said, get to that next goal. Any advice you'd give to them to keep them going, inspire them?
Yeah, I think just try to take everything one day at a time and kind of focus on whatever it is you're doing and try to not get too discouraged or not get too far in the future in your head and just kind of do what you can. Especially, I think, it's hard for me to speak anything outside of comedy because I've never done anything. But I think just kind of asking yourself, what can I do today to make myself more successful? And then worrying about that and not getting too far ahead of yourself.
No, that's great advice, too. Just reflecting on what you said, too. It's we keep talking about social media, but sometimes, posting that picture you wouldn't otherwise post or taking, just a second to, reply to a fan, instead of ignore a message. Maybe that's what you can do today, and then you got a fan for the next week, month, year.
Yeah.
Just something small like that. But also, too, somebody that's just starting out, maybe hustle. Instead of going, hey, I want people to follow me, maybe follow some people, tell them they're doing a great job, put some love out there. You might, get some love back.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah, I'd like to be positive just generally in life.
Well, right, probably one of the biggest compliments to you might be another comedian coming up to you, taking the time to say, hey, that was a great set. Maybe that happens once a week. But if you put it out there, do it, I don't know, 3 times a week.
Right.
Maybe you start getting that same love back.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we should all be better people for sure.
Well, Joe, we always like to end with you plugging that social media, one more time. Where can people find you?
At Joe List Comedy on Twitter and Instagram, and then Comedian Joe List on Facebook is my fan page. Give that a like. And then Tuesdays with Stories every Tuesday on iTunes or wherever you find Stitcher, I think, wherever you find podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Take the time right now to, kind of click over, like Joe online. And when you're over on the iTunes app or the Stitcher app or wherever you listen, subscribe to the show.
Yep.
Yeah.
It, rate it.
Yeah, give it 5 stars, write them a review. It helps raise them up the charts. We know that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Even if you don't listen, just give it a 5-star review.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I should warn it. It's quite sexual and racy, and so just viewer discretion.
Yeah. Joe, thanks again for doing the interview. This has been amazing. We appreciate you, saying yes, coming out this morning, meeting us for coffee.
Oh, thank you. I loved it. It was great.
Cool.
All right, guys, this has been another great episode of Guys Telling Stories podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. You can head to our link at guystellingstories.com/iTunes, and while you're over there, subscribe to our show as well, okay?
That's right.
All right, I'm Rich Douglas.
I'm Bill Easton.
All right, take care.